Welcome to Roman Fiction. If you enjoy the story, then please like and subscribe. Now, on to our tale of forbidden love. The gardens of the Domus Lupus were fragrant with cypress and sage, their silence broken only by the soft sound of sandals gliding across the gravel. Summer in Rome burned relentlessly, yet Aurora Glacius walked through the heat with the composure of a patrician wife, her bronze brooch glinting against her fine linen tunic. She moved like smoke, soft, sinuous, and barely there, until she saw her. Herta Mancina stood beside the marble basin, her hands skimming the cool water. Her profile, half veiled by an auburn curl, caught the light like a goddess from the temple fresco. Aurora stopped and said softly, "You're early." Herta smiled, but didn't turn. "So are you," she replied. They met under the guise of domestic obligation. Their husbands, Senators Virginius Lupus and Judas Dives, had long-standing alliances. Weekly luncheons between their families were a political tradition. Still, the women had created their own rituals beneath the weight of civic expectation. Initially, their meetings consisted of polite conversation, encompassing topics such as politics, philosophy, and family. Then came whispers, followed by touches, and eventually long silences where their eyes met across rows of pillars, and an undeniable heat swelled in places it should not. This was Rome, after all. The city devoured scandal for sport, and both women were fully aware of it. The affair had begun 6 months ago, in winter's hush. One evening, while the men debated tariffs and tribunes over wine, Aurora wandered out onto the balcony where she found Herta already there, shivering slightly. "It's colder than I expected." Herta murmured, her lips slightly quivering. Aurora, ever bold, stepped closer and adjusted Herta's shawl, her fingers lingering as the distance between them collapsed. Now they lived in a dangerous space between impulse and consequence. They would begin to carve minutes from banquets, brushing hands behind veils, exchanging scrolls penned with poetry, too intimate to be called friendship. Yet, like with all things Roman, everything would be destined for decay, even secret gardens. It would be Judas Dives who first suspected. His wife's laughter had changed. Her body now turned from him at night. He noticed how she lingered near Aurora, in the softness of her voice, in the scent of sandalwood and rose that clung to her long after leaving the Glaciers' house. Virginius Lupus noticed it too. A man of war, once a legate under Marcus Aurelius, he trusted discipline above all. His wife's gaze had grown distant. Her prayers were more frequent. Her passion was absent. However, Virginius did not confront her. Not yet, at least. It was at the Saturnalia feast that the world cracked. The two women danced, nothing overt, merely part of the merriment. But there was a hunger in their eyes, a rhythm in their steps, that only the truly observant could see. Judas saw it, and so did Virginius. Later that night, the women stole away to the garden. Cloaked by laurel and night, they kissed beneath the moon, unaware that Virginius watched from the shadows, his jaw clenched, hand white-knuckled on the hilt of his gladius. But he did not draw it. Instead, he returned to his chambers and drank until dawn. Days passed. Then came silence. No more invitations. No more shared walks. Aurora waited, then wrote, then wept. Herta's replies grew sparse, cold, and clipped with Roman finality. "It is not safe," she wrote once. "Judas has eyes everywhere. I fear for us." Aurora burned the letter in her courtyard and stared at the ashes until the slaves swept them away. The final confrontation came not in secret, but in spectacle. A senate gathering at Julius Severus' estate, with all the city's elite. Under one roof, Herta arrived on Judas's arm, dressed in emerald silk, her smile a mask carved from marble. Aurora stood across the atrium, eyes locked on her, unable to breathe. The moment came, brief and hidden. When they crossed paths near the statue of Venus, Aurora reached out and brushed Herta's wrist. The older woman flinched. "No more," Herta whispered. "He knows. They both know. But I love you," Aurora said, her eyes brimming. And that is the tragedy. That night, Aurora returned home to find Virginius waiting. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't strike her. He simply stood there, aged by grief. "You love her," he said. Aurora didn't deny it. "Then I am a fool," he said, and left her in the silence of their once shared bed. Weeks passed. Rome moved on. Scandals bloomed and died with the wine. But the two women became shadows of their former selves. Herta grew pale. Judas, ever calculating, kept her under watch. She no longer wrote. She no longer smiled. Aurora, for her part, fasted, prayed, and wandered the temple steps by night. She began leaving offerings at the temple of Vesta, not for the gods, but for memory. Then, one night, a miracle or a curse. A slave arrived at Aurora's estate with a single scroll. No seal, no signature. Just a line, "At the grove of Diana, when the moon is highest." She went, cloaked, silent, breathless, as if pulled by fate. There, beneath the oak canopy, Herta stood, eyes wide, hands trembling. "I had to see you," she said. Aurora stepped forward. "Then let us leave. Tonight we could disappear together." But Herta shook her head. "We cannot run from Rome. We are Rome." Then, for the final time, they kissed, not with the hunger of secret lovers, but with the sorrow of those who know it must end. They held each other beneath the stars, weeping softly until the first light of dawn broke over the Palatine. 2 days later, Herta Mancinus entered a convent near Neapolis, declared by Judas as penance for the illness of the soul. Aurora never saw her again. Virginius Lupus, despite being wounded, remained married to Aurora, keeping the scandal from the Senate. But the home was hollow, all marble, no fire. Judas Dives continued his rise through the courts, his ambition spotless. Though, at the same time, his wife's disappearance from public life was explained by whispered tales of piety and madness. Years passed. Though Aurora bore a child and Herta's name faded from Rome's lips, the laurel in the Domus Lupus garden grew taller each year, sheltering a single stone bench beneath its shade. Sometimes, at dusk, Aurora would sit there and press, her palm to the marble, remembering the woman who once danced beneath Saturn's stars, and how love, though forbidden, had once showed her what happiness could have been. Thank you for joining me on this journey through ancient Rome. If you enjoyed this story and crave more tales of intrigue, bravery, and adventure from the Roman Empire, click here for more Roman fiction. Until our next adventure, farewell.